Hey, welcome back to the session, and today we are diving into chapter 4, which is post independence Indian English literature, a kind of chronological anthology of English novelists in English. Sounds heavy, right? Maybe, but trust me, it's where the real story begins. So, what we're gonna do, we will divide this chapter into 4 parts, and this is the first part. And the first part is the first voice, and then the second part in our next session will talk about pioneers of Indian fiction like R.K. Narayan and others. And then the third part will talk about women writers at that time. And then finally, in the fourth part, we'll talk about partition narrative, where you get like 3 to 4 questions easily, total in the session. So after 47, Indian writers weren't just writing, they were rewriting identity, freedom, and the self. From Mulk Raj Anand to Arundhati Roy. And it's a timeline of truth telling. And remember, this is where you get question in your exam, especially the chronological order. So keep your eyes open. Net love this kind of question. So let's get started. We're going to talk about the first voice and a study of foundational Indian writers in English. Okay, so let's be real. When we think of Indian English literature, we jump to Rushdie, right? But what? It started way earlier, like 19th century early, and this section, it's a time machine. You'll meet Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, the guy who gave us Rajmohan's wife, right, and lit the fire of literary nationalism. Then we'll also talk about Panchkouree Khan in this session. Real name, as I don't know if you know it, George Wyatt. They have asked question based on that. That's why I put the name here. And he was writing kind of savage satire on British rule in the revelation of an orderly. That's the work. Anyway, we'll talk about it. Then we'll also talk about the women in this, like Krupabai, Kamala, Cornelia, Raj Lakshmi. They weren't just writing, they were fighting for space, for voice, for agency. So in a time that barely saw them as equal. And then we'll also talk about Sudhindra Nath Ghose, and he kind of blend folklore and exile like a lyrical dream. So yeah, this isn't just history, it's resilience, it's imagination. It's where Indian English fiction found its voice. So we'll start with that. And one question definitely might show up in your exam, because in the past couple of years they have been asking question based on this particular session. So anyway, let's go with Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, architect of Indian literary nationalism. So ever heard of Rajmohan's wife? You must have. It's our first novel, right, in English. So it's not just a novel, it's a first Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay wrote in English back in 1864. Very important date, and this was actually asked in your exam again and again, all the time, I guess. So widely considered in the first, it is the first Indian English novel. And guess what? It's not some flower love story because of the name. It's about Matangini, remember the character, stuck in a violent marriage, who risks her life to stop her husband evil plans. She fights, she flees, she even gets locked up by another man who tries to break her spirit, but she doesn't give in, and then she dies young. A tragic end, but a symbol of courage, of resistance, of patriarchy crushes voice. And Bankim, after this, he switches to Bengali and he wrote what? Next novel, Durgesh Nandini. Very important, they have asked question on that. Starts a new chapter in Bengali literature. And I'll tell you one more thing. Did you know the song Vande Mataram, right? That song actually came from a novel called Anandamat, written by our Chattopadhyay, and it's not just a book, it's a battle cry, and set during what? Sannyasi rebellion. And it follows warrior monks fighting British rule, and it's a kind of total myth meets a revolution vibe. What you have to remember, that Vande Mataram was the song taken from this novel. Okay, so let's talk about another thing, that is about his work, Kapal Kundala, a kind of love story. And that actually what happens, this love story gone tragic, then where Mirinalini, romance mixed with history, then Raj Simba, pure political allegory. And he even compared Sakuntala, Miranda, and Desdemona were in one of his essay, Kalidas versus Shakespeare. And he did that just casually, wrote about also, Bhagavad Gita and Dharma before it was even cool. So anyway, you don't have to memorize all these things. What you have to know that he has written the first English novel, which is Rajmohan's wife, and then he wrote Anandamath, because from these two you get question always, right? And again, especially the song, because in your previous net, they have asked about the Vande Mataram song, where it was taken from. So that question has shown up. So in that case, in that perspective, Anandamath became equally important as Rajmohan's wife. Now we're going to talk about Panchkouree Khan. And here's a name that really, sounds kind of made up, right? It's actually a British guy. His real name was George Wyatt, an Anglo-Indian civil servant who worked in the colonial courts, but instead of just serving the empire, what he did, he exposed them. How? And this was actually asked in your exam as well. So he wrote what? The Revelation of an Orderly. Very important, they have asked question based on that. A kind of satirical novel from a low-level Indian court. So this British guy, man writing as a native Indian, just to show how broken the British system really was, like corruption, arrogance, chaos, all of it laid bare through everyday mess. It's a sharp, bold, and honest, and it's kind of way ahead of its time, because this wasn't just storytelling, it was kind of whistleblower at that time. And in the history of Indian English fiction, Wyatt didn't just write about India, he flipped the script from India, right? So anyway, let's talk about another one, and I'm gonna talk about Indian feminist novel in English, the pioneer of it. Who wrote one of India's first feminist novel in English? It was Krupabai Satthianadhan. And her story, it is deep. She was born to Hindu converts, raised Christian, and shaped by her brother's intellect. But when he died, that grief, it became the soul of her novel Saguna, and that was actually asked in your exam, so don't skip it. So along with Kamala, these two books did something wild. They gave us Indian women kind of thinking, reading, questioning, and choosing education over marriage, and dreaming of freedom while stuck inside that four walls. And Shaguna, she walks into medical college in colonial India. That's not just fiction, that's a rebellion. So Krupabai didn't write for applause, she wrote because no one else was telling the story. So yeah, before feminism had a name in India, she was already doing the work. Now let's talk about India's first women advocate and literary reformer. Ever heard of Cornelia Sorabji? Not right, because in it they have asked one question recently, and she was India's first women advocate, but she was, started fighting before the system, even let her in. First woman to graduate from where? Bombay University, then off to go to where? Oxford. First woman to study law, and but she still wasn't allowed to practice law in India till 1923. What a shame, right? So what did she do in the meantime? She worked without official power, helping who Parda Nashin's women and those hidden from public life and get legal help. So at that time it was quite a revolution, right? One case at a time. She finally passed the LLB and then pleaders exam, but still court hesitated, but Cornelia, she didn't just argue cases, she wrote stories, essays, memories, books like Between the Twilight and Subhala, Love and Life Beyond the Parda, and it has been asked in your exam. Now I'm going to talk about another important stuff. Ever heard of Detective Janaki? Probably not. It's one of those lost novels by Kamala Satthianadhan. A woman who did everything but still slipped through the cracks. She wasn't just a writer, she was a reformer, an editor, and a feminist way, before it was cool. So born in 1880, she married who Sathyanandan, and after his first wife Krupabai that we have discussed, passed away, and together what they wrote stories of Indian Christian life, and this was actually asked in your exam. Very important. Recently they have asked, and it has in a 12 story that dig into the struggle of Christian converts, their faith, guilt, gender, everything clashing in colonial India. But Kamala didn't stop there. She launched the Indian Ladies magazine at that time, in 1901, a space for women's, voices when no one was listening at that time, and it ran for nearly 4 decades. It's a lot of time, right? Publishing fictions, essays, even political commentary, by women and for women, So Kamala might not be, in every textbook, but she laid the foundation of what we now call intersectional feminist in Indian literature. It loves hidden treasure like her, our net. So that's why they have asked a question based on that. So anyway, I'm gonna just mention one more name here that you should not skip. That is Raj Lakshmi Debi, and she should have been a headline at that time. She was writing English fiction way back in the 1870s. That's quite long time, right? And that's before most people even thought Indian women could write in English. She was writing a novel. Her novel, The Hindu Wife or The Enchanted Food, that's one of the earliest English novel by an Indian woman that has been asked in your exam. So the story follows Kamala, a young woman married off to an older man and is stuck in a world that told her to be quiet, obedient, invisible. But Kamala, she was, she wants dignity, she wants agency, she wants more than rituals and silence. And Raj Lakshmi, she didn't stop at domestic drama. Her later work like Lajuk Lata and takes on social political themes, and long before feminism became a buzzword at that time, she was living it, writing it inside a conservative world. Not just a writer, a quite a revolutionary, I must say. So next I'm gonna mention one of, again, earlier novelist, you can say. You probably heard of R.K. Narayan, right? Maybe Mulk Raj Anand, all of them, right? But ever heard of that, Sudhindra Ghosh? No, right? And that has been asked in your exam. That's why we have put his name here. He was nominated for the Nobel Prize in literature, let the sink in, born in Bengal, but wrote everything from Europe. Still, his stories, they smell of Indian, monsoon, sounds like folk tale from your grandmother. His most famous work, a tetralogy, The Vermilion Boat, they have asked in your exam, and this one was actually asked in recent exam. So along with and Gazelle Sleeping, Cradle of Cloud, The Flame of the Forest, he lived abroad, but his stories never left home. Sudhindra Ghosh didn't just write novels, he built bridges between India and the world, between memory and imagination. So if you're preparing for NET, again, this particular author is also important. Don't believe me, but believe UGC NET. Just go back and check the PYQ. You'll find his name anyway somewhere. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about their chronological order, because they have asked question on their particular chronological order, especially by their birth. So we use some, here's the full list of the name, and what we're gonna do, we'll create a code to remember all of these things. The code is here, like Chandu ki bai, Suraj Devi, Kamal Nath. So it's done. All of them are in actual chronological order by their birth. So Chandu, yet what? Chandra, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, the pioneer of English fiction, right? Who wrote Rajmohan's wife, first one. Then Krupabai Satthianadhan, one of the first women novelists in English. She wrote Shaguna and Kamala, right? Shaguna. And Cornelia Sorabji, the first Indian women advocate, wrote what Between the Twilight, Shubala, Love and Lie Beyond the Parda. Then Raj Lakshmi Debi, we have early voice of dramatic resistance and the author of the what Hindu wife. Very important ask in your exam, right? Next, Kamala Satthianadhan, editor, social reformer, women's issue in Christian India, and the author of stories of what Indian Christian life, asked in your exam. Then at the end, what we discussed and in our code is what Sudhindra Nath Ghose, known for mythic folkloric storytelling, famous for what he wrote Ghazal, Sleeping, Cradle of the Cloud, and The Flame of Forest. So that's all for in this session. And next session we're gonna talk about, and it's gonna be lengthy, the next session maybe 20-25 minutes, but we're gonna cover every single stuff from Mulk Raj Anand, R.K. Narayan, Raja Rao, Manohar Molgankar, everybody, and after that, and definitely you're gonna from these 4 session, the chapter 4 that we have divided 4 parts, right, 4 videos. So if you just attend all these 4, and you will definitely secure at least 5 questions, and that's a lot, right? And we have already finished our 5 questions, right, before all these session. So in our next session we're gonna talk about all the pioneers, early novelist, R.K. Narayan, and I will make sure that you remember all of them in order, and especially all of their works, because that's what you get in your exam all the time. And also in our third session we'll talk about women writer who wrote a lot of things, like Kamala Markandeya is there. All of them will talk about it, and definitely you're gonna get one question based on the women writer. So that's how actually UGC that make exams. Your question paper, they'll just group, they kind of don't ask like random stuff. Everything should be in group order, like the one we have discussed right now, right? These are all in order. They have asked question based on like match the following, but they are all together. They might be asking about chronological order. They actually asked about it, all were in the group. They asked match the following between them, again the same group. And they asked about what about correct, which is the correct statement, from all these groups. So like that they are kind of asking questions. So we have already discussed, and if you have completed this session, then total means you have completed your 6 questions, and next session you'll get around like 3 questions, so you can just make it 8. And then when we talk about 2, then 3 more chapter is the remaining, I guess. That'll be poetry. 1 question definitely comes from there. Then 2 questions from the drama, Indian drama comes. All that we'll also discuss. And then we'll move on to Dalit literature. Mostly what you get are like 3 to 4 questions every time. In previous exam they asked 4 questions based on Dalit literature. That's very important. Then we'll have Indian modern post-colonial studies and the critical theory and criticism, that usually get 1 or 2 questions that will also done. And remember, in our next session that we're going to talk about, in this chapter, I mean, there will be partition narration, and from that you get 1 question. But last time they asked 2 questions. That's a lot, right? That's what they asked 23 questions from Indian writing in English. That's a lot of number. If we just follow this trend, you might encounter 20 minimum, if you can say 20 questions. And 20 questions a lot, and if you just get all these 20 questions correct, you will get 40 marks, right? That's a lot of number, that's a lot. And that's what we're gonna do when we when we finish this, and I'll try to finish within 1 week this Indian, so you'll have 20 questions done. And then we will move to world literature. Very important, very short session. In 2 days everything will be done. Like American will be completed, and your Canadian, your Australian, and Russian and German, all of the important thing will be completed in 2 days. That's maximum. What time is required? Because the content, why I was not till now posting anything, because I wanted to collect all the information in order, right? I don't have to just go around search every single question. You're like 1000 2000 page every time I write a session. So what I did this time is I just collected everything in order, like in a bunch. And when I collected, when I completed the all the sorting out, now it's like, I just have to check the session and take the content, whatever the grouping that I made, and make a session for you. Easy. And these are, all the time they have asked question based on that. That's the power of that sorting is, through all the 10 years or 5 years questions. So in our next session, I will, try to complete this in, maybe today or tomorrow. I mean, this chapter 4, very important, because you're getting 5 questions, so that's why chapter 4 is very important. And as I told you, we talked about what our session will be. After completing this, we will focus on poetry, especially after the independence until modern. Then we'll talk about drama. That will be your second session. And then we'll talk about contemporary fiction. One question definitely, like you have seen that Iradi and all these, authors that you will not able, you won't be able to find anything about them. That's very crazy thing. Nothing in whole internet you will find about Iradi. It's very difficult to find about these kind of author, and that kind of question, they are hidden gem they ask for you, and you can't, sometime you have to accept the truth. The truth that you won't be able to solve all of those 100 questions. One or two will be kind of, you'll miss it, and that'll be like unknown topic. So accept that truth. 4-5 question, even if you miss, it's fine. But anyway, you're gonna get 80 questions right. 160 questions, marks you will get in your next exam. So let me, I'm trying hard to everything in order to put everything in. Actually all of these things I'm doing alone, so that's why I require time. But I'm sorry that there was some delay. Now delay is kind of over. Now what we're gonna do, I'll just post every single day all the content, and I'll try to finish in those whatever 45 days are remaining, that I'll try to finish everything. Okay. And for the paper one we will go live, because recording, editing will take a lot of time. So what we'll do for the paper one, we'll just take a session, and if you have time, you just join and watch that. And it's gonna be lengthy. So paper one, because we are going to cover a lot of stuff in one video, so you don't have to watch all the time, and keep your note for the paper one separately, and we'll do that too. So let me see if I'll be able to finish. Of course, I'll try my best. But anyway, I'll see you in next session. So bye bye for now.